right, Donald, thanks so much for being here. I know it's probably been a few days of back-to-back questions, a lot of the same, right? But appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Quite the lengthy career as a makeup artist for film and television. Some standouts as I was looking through, a number with Mark Wahlberg, from Three Kings to Planet of the Apes, The Departed, which is one of my favorite movies, by the way. And more. You have Cowboys and Aliens, Skyfall with Daniel Craig, as well as others, Blade Runner 2049, Spider-Man Far From Home, Dune, Morbius. How do you keep them all straight? BAFTA and Oscar nominations for Dune, as well as others, and Saturn and Emmy Awards and other award wins as well. Just quite the career there. What led you to get involved with Moon Knight?
Well, as we were finishing up Dune, Oscar Isaac had mentioned it to me. Was I available, interested? And of course I was. And I hadn't been involved in streaming at all. I hadn't been involved in television in many, many years. And it was appealing. I had a great experience with Marvel with Spider-Man with Jake Gyllenhaal. And so I thought, I'm interested in it. I looked it up and checked it out, looked at the character, and there'd be some fun makeup looks for me, for sure. And that's what happened. And I ended up putting together a crew and running the makeup and prosthetics and hair for the show, which was more interesting for me because I like to put together a team, and I was able. The great thing with a Marvel show like that is they do allow for a budget where you can put together some new people, some younger, newer, less experienced people. And I think it's great. It's a great training ground, and television and streaming, as they call it, is a great training ground for people. So the oldies like me and a few people on my team, David Atherton, people like that, Lube Larson, who works with me a lot, who's like one of the best in prosthetics, we then are working with people who are newer to it. And I think it's a great balance. That's
excellent. It's interesting just seeing that there's so many different opportunities for this series in general, in terms of the different projects that you would have to tackle, right? And just thinking primarily about Oscar playing multiple characters, and obviously being the same actor, but then the different incarnations we see of characters played by May, as well as just everything else that goes into sort of this fantasy show like Marvel is used to producing when it comes to superheroes. What kind of challenges does that create based off of some of the differences in other projects that you've been a part of that were a little bit more grounded, so to speak? So The Departed or The Guilty, things like that.
Well, I guess for me, the approach is, I don't like to say the same on everything, but I do approach the way I work is that's my style. Everybody has their own unique approach or their own way. I tend to work based in reality or grounded, and people like that. That's, I'm not the guy you're going to call for Lord of the Rings. It's just not my thing. Sure. But what I liked about Moon Knight is there was the element of, we had sort of not quite zombie, but we had some fun makeups. We had Yvonne Poharnak doing some, head caprice, and Lube redoing tattoos for Ethan. And yet I still had Oscar in a makeup that's, I think, believable and subtle, but yet you knew there was a difference. And May looking like, as Mohammed Diab, our director, said, I want a non-exotic stereotype Egypt. I want, a modern contemporary looking Layla. So that's what we did with May, and I'm really proud to be part of something like that. And yet I think it still has an authenticity and a kind of a grittiness to it that you don't often see in not just Marvel, but in streaming and this type of show. So I'm very happy to be part of that. And those guys were great. Benson and Moorhead and Muhammad really wanted a feature film quality in the makeup. And I'm thankful for that, that I was able to help do a little of what I do.
That certainly comes across. And I'm glad that you mentioned sort of the modernism of what we saw on TV, because it certainly is there's a modern authenticity, so to speak, to combine two of the terms that you use there. That is really refreshing seeing it when you're seeing a series that's set with a backdrop of, Egyptian mythology. I really enjoyed that. And that definitely comes across in terms of the work that you and your team have done. When it comes to a Marvel show like this, and I guess thinking back to Far From Home as well, we hear a lot about how many things can be prescribed in a Marvel project or some of the big franchises. But when it comes to the work that you do, how much of that is sort of predetermined direction, and how much leeway are you given to kind of deliver your own vision?
Well, I mean, it's really interesting you ask that, because I sort of felt that would occur or happen, and it didn't. I didn't feel that at all, actually. I was waiting, and Grant Curtis, our showrunner, was incredible, because really we came up, sometimes the only thing I would say, which was maybe a little bit disappointing, is you don't get as much coverage as you would, in a feature film. Or we would do work on background, and, these sort of zombie type makeups you don't really see, or the Hecka priests, unfortunately we didn't see that much of, but that happens in movies. It's just the way it is.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I got to do blood and bruises and cuts and scrapes, and nobody stopped me. And in fact, I think Mohammed really enjoyed it, and Benson and Moorhead. I didn't feel at all, creatively, the Marvel guys presented us a tattoo idea for Disciples and the scales. And we looked at it and went, yeah, but it doesn't really work as a tattoo. It works on a piece of paper. And we were able to change it up, and Lube said, yeah, I can redraw it and we'll make it as a different. Ethan then said, well, I want it a bit bigger, and nobody stopped us. They were like, okay, I think that makes sense. I didn't feel there was anybody having kind of ownership other than they own the material, but they hired me for expertise, Sure. So I have to say, with May, with her makeup and hair, I didn't feel that anybody took away any creativity that we were able to bring.
That's excellent. And it definitely comes through, as I mentioned before, but with that authenticity and the practicality, I think, comes through with just hearing the description of the changes that may have been made to the tattoo and how that looked. I mean, of course, when it's animated, it's going to look a certain way, but it is definitely a believable tattoo that someone could have, which I think is very important for something like this.
Sure.
Did you go back to any of the source material, the Moon Knight comics, or anything of that sort to kind of influence how you moved forward?
Well, I had the comics. I had picked up a couple of the comics. I didn't know them, but I quite like, just going back to a couple of references and then choosing my own references, which it just works for me. I mean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, the Tenant particularly for Oscar for his makeup. But then from Moon Knight, the bandage, on his nose, so there were things, but of course you look at source material, looked at other Marvel projects, some I know, some I don't, and then add my own touch to it. And so going into the Asylum episode 5, 6, I really enjoyed it, because we could do subtle things that were still slightly could be over the top, doing Ethan, changing him up with that wig and the mustache, and it was fun, and it was still within a world I think was believable. I was cautious. You've got to still have fun, and we had the avatars, and the gold guy, I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but that's
yes.
But that was fun to do. It was really fun, and then they appear, spoilers, in 5, I guess. And I really enjoy that, so I did look at that, but I also look at, I think the idea of, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is perfect to present for that.
Yeah, that's excellent. You mentioned jumping on board after working with Oscar on Dune. And as I mentioned at the beginning, you've worked with the same actors over and over again in multiple projects. And that was interesting to me, how, I guess in the profession that's more common. What advantages to your work do you see in kind of sticking with some of the same actors and performers?
I think that, you gain a trust and you trust them, but you don't have to go through the niceties and how are you today? I mean, I don't go in for all that. I just want to get on with it. I'm not small talk. I really, and I think a lot of actors don't like it either. If you don't want to talk, you don't talk. You get on with the work. But there's a level of comfort in doing the work. I work quickly. I don't mess around. I'm efficient. It's also a very old friend of mine, a set decorator, always said, Donald, it's show business, not show fun. I can't bear people in the hair and makeup that just, it gets too chatty and huggy, lovey-dovey. I can't bear it because it takes away the discipline of the hair makeup room.
Sure.
And other departments recognize that about us. And that sometimes embarrasses me, if that makes sense. So I want us to be perceived as very, that we have a position to uphold. So yeah, we just get on with it and you do the work, and that's it.
That's great. Donald, do you think you'll continue on with some streaming series in the future? Is that of interest to you versus some of the films that you've done?
I would love to. I mean, I hope people ask me. I would love to. I think there's a lot out there that I've been watching, and yes, absolutely. I really enjoyed the experience.
That's excellent. What's next for you?
Well, next, I just finished a Guy Ritchie film called The Interpreter, and starting prep for Dune Part 2.
Very good. Very good. So this is kind of the random question of the interview, but outside of what you've worked on, what you have coming up, is there a project that's out there that you would absolutely love to work on, or sort of that one that maybe got away that you would love to dabble in?
Wow. Well, that's a tough one, because I watch so many shows and think, God, I love this show, but I wouldn't want to work on it. There are many shows I think, God, I wouldn't want to work on that. Things that I really love, like Downton Abbey, things like that, which who doesn't? I mean, it's that kind of thing. God, that's a great question. Never thought about it. Usually things I watch, I don't know if I'd want to work on them.
It's understandable.
A little bit terrified of them. There's something, because too much and what would go into it, and you think, God, I wouldn't have the patience for that. So I don't know. But I love, to be honest with you, I do miss working on smaller films. So when I watch things last year like Coda, and they don't have makeup elements. So I always wonder why I'm liking it so much, because I love documentaries. Sure. Here I'm a makeup man for 35 years, and I love documentaries and some animated films, which would totally put me out of work. But there's something, I don't know, the theater. I love going to the theater. So the same thing. I don't know, a show that I would love to work on.
And you don't have to answer, because I know that is a grab bag question there. There's probably a lot out there.
There's a couple out there, but I just don't know. I when I see them, I think, oh, that would be great, until I don't think it would be.
Sure. Probably something that you just need to throw yourself into. I'm sure there's aspects of every position that probably.
Well, Sex Education. I like all those teen shows. Sex Education, I love. I think it's a great show. I would love to work on that. How about that?
There you go. That's a perfect answer. Donald, I thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us, because, we often talk about a lot of the unsung heroes, so to speak, of these projects. And you even just preparing to speak with you made me go back and look a little bit more with a fine-tooth comb, so to speak, and just recognize the work that you do and your team has done on Moon Knight. And even in all the other projects that, I cited at the beginning, and ones that I even didn't. Some of the prosthetic work in particular is just phenomenal and otherworldly in terms of transforming sort of what's on the screen. So I certainly appreciate it and wish you the best moving forward with the projects. And thank you so far for what you've done.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks so
much. Have a nice day. Okay, bye-bye. Well. Thank you.